All right, y'all people. I am directly in the lab because we didn't have enough time to go out and view the sceneries. I'm feeling like Dr. Seuss today because I got a lot to teach. You know, I really like to dig deep into different sciences of our body. Lot to learn, y'all. This main tutorial will be about digestion. You know, everything starts off in our mouth. You know, how a person gets sick, how a person dies, and you know, it all based on what we put in our mouth, what we feed our source. This is our ammunition, guys. This is our fuel that makes us work optimally. Performance. Our performance has to work optimally because there are two types of diseases out here. There's a toxicity on one side and there's a deficiency on the other side. And I call that our bell curve. And we have to make sure that we are at the top working optimally. And it all starts off from the mouth. So I got a couple of myths I need to clear up with people. You know, some people would say digestion starts off in the mouth. And I would simply tell them that some foods do start off in the mouth. And that particular food is carbohydrate. Now, carbohydrates are our fastest way to absorb and to utilize as our energy source. Now, we're going to dig into proteins, we're going to dig into fats, but in this main section of the video, because it's a long topic, guys, it's going to be about carbohydrates. So let's get acquainted on what type of carbohydrates that are going through our digestive system. In this diagram here, we're going to get to know all these different sections. So, say for instance, we eat a potato, some type of bread, or some type of Snicker bar. We're going to find out that our salivary glands has a way to secrete an enzyme to start the digestion in our mouth. And that is only for carbohydrates. That enzyme is called amylase. And it binds to large molecules of sugar. These are long chains of polysaccharides. And when it goes down this 10-inch tube, and that is called our esophagus, we end up meeting another small muscle. When we come up into this small muscle, I'm going to blow up this section here so that you can see it big here. And notice that you reach a muscle called the lower esophageal sphincter. Now, this is our food. It's in large polysaccharides because we're talking about carbohydrates. And once it reaches this small little muscle, it has to enter the stomach. Now this muscle has one job. It is to let things go down into the stomach. But we heard of a condition where a person can have the food come back up. I'm not talking about vomiting. I'm talking about once the food has hit the stomach and it reaches what we call hydrochloric acid, I'm going to call that hydrochloric acid, that it makes this stuff come back up and it don't taste too good. So they call that heartburn, right? They call that heartburn. So the hydrochloric acid is there to help break the food down. And that's being signaled off by the salivary glands already way up here in the esophagus. It's already being signaled off for the stomach to secrete the hydrochloric acid. Start making it because we're about to eat. We're about to break some food down into this soupy substance called chyme. So the hydrochloric acid, its job was to break the food down. But it has another job. It's supposed to sterilize the food because the food has other toxins on it. It has other bacteria on it. You know, it has harmful chemicals like insecticides, pesticides, and things like that. It doesn't matter. Like, all of us have bacteria. We have good bacteria that's supposed to overweigh the bad bacteria. So just like the plants, the potatoes, the bread, and all those different things, they also have bacteria on it also. So the hydrochloric acid is there to sterilize it so that you could be able to absorb the nutrients. Now, the absorption actually happens in what we call stage 2, but we're talking about stage 1. And there's a lot of different problems just from your mouth to your stomach. It's a $6 billion industry that the medical community takes advantage of because we don't understand what heartburn is. It is very important we know. Now, I don't try to plan everything that I'm talking about here because it's a lot to digest, and that's what we're talking about, digestion. But the heartburn situation is what doctors like to call GERD. That is gastroesophageal reflux disorder. Now, the major solution that doctors have for this, and they prescribe people, are antacids. So what does antacids do? What does antacids do? They're to lower the hydrochloric acid. Now, we need hydrochloric acid, and we need hydrochloric acid to help break down the food. So if they lower the hydrochloric acid, what do you think that they're trying to do? Obviously, they don't want this acid, which is very highly acidic. It is at the pH of 2, if I didn't cover that yet. pH of 2 has to lower that pH to break down the food. It has to be able to turn it into a soupy substance. And they don't want this fluid, this acid, to rise up to the LES, the sphincter. I don't think that cures the whole cause. That's just handling the symptom. So we don't want to handle the symptom. We want to cure the whole cause. So why is the food going the wrong way? Why is the food going the wrong way? Let's get into that. Well, there's 3 different reasons categorized into one reason that the food is going the wrong way. They call that this pressure that builds up into the stomach because these are gases. It's trying to break down stuff. I said we have hydrochloric acid to break down bacteria. And what is a carbohydrate? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Therefore, that means it's going to release some type of gas. So the reason why the food is going the wrong way going up is because the intra-abdominal pressure that starts from low stomach acid. It starts from let me write it down. I probably put it here. It starts from low stomach acid, and it starts from malabsorption, and it starts from bacteria. Mainly because of the low stomach acid, it is basically the other 2 would be taken care of. You know, it wouldn't happen. But because they're low stomach acid, it allows bacteria to not be able to be sterilized. So therefore, the bacteria is allowed to grow up. As the bacteria goes, it grows. Now, bacteria is like H. pylori. They will grow inside of the stomach because of the acid being so low. So these are our food particles trying to be able to break down. It needs to be able to go to the pyloric sphincter, but it cannot go to the pyloric sphincter yet because food is still trying to digest. It shouldn't take that long for your food to finally digest. That should happen every single night for around about 2 to 3 hours. We also have E. coli. Now, everybody has an E. coli going on because it's all on type of foods. You know, they build their own bacteria for their own safeties also. So when it's an overgrowth of those bacteria, it's only because of the acid being too low. It's only because acid is too low, and that calls for you to malabsorb. Food does not go down into the pyloric sphincter that way. It can't go down whole. It has to turn it into a soupy substance. You get what I'm saying? So why does a person have heartburn? If the stomach acid is low, the bacteria grows. It produces a gas, and now your stomach farts. It's the releasing of hydrogen gas. And it is the only place in the body that it is being produced. If it comes out the other way, because we got, as above, so below, comes out the other way, it comes out as a hydrogen sulfide, because we got sulfates that turns things into a sulfide. Now, this intra-abdominal pressure that arises and makes this gas release comes up this LES, the lower esophageal sphincter. So that's the cause of heartburn, acid reflux. You don't have to, you got to cure the low stomach acid. That's the cause. So once you cure the low stomach acid, you'll be fine. Now, we are talking about carbohydrates. Now, we talked all about stage 1. So let's get into a little bit of stage 2. We've been talking about the potatoes, the bread, and those different things. So once we get to the lower parts of our stomach, and it enters these pyloric sphincter, we have other things that needs to break it down more, because it's still at a polysaccharide. So we had to do a dinner, and there's ducts that has to break down the polysaccharides a little bit further, What happens is that the pancreas is secreting other enzymes. We secrete about 2 cups of pancreatic juice every single day just to break down all these polysaccharides from our carbohydrates that we eat. Now, it's secreting these polysaccharides to turn them into disaccharides. So once we into the small intestines, guys, this is how it looks. It looks like a vacuum cleaner brush. Your vacuum cleaner brush has this way to suck up the debris and all the different nutrients. You're going to say these are nutrients, these are minerals. So it's breaking down into these other things called enterocytes. The enterocytes are on the bristles, or I would say the microvilli. They sit here to bring the nutrients of all of this fluid. This is all fluid, because we now have heavy particles anymore. We're trying to break this down. So the enterocytes are sitting at the ends just so they can take up these nutrients and bring it to the hepatic vein. The hepatic vein then takes it to the liver so it can break down whatever toxins are there, and certain things, or certain sugars for that matter, disaccharides turn into a monosaccharide, has to be absorbed in a different way. So this happens when all of our absorption is taking place. So we have 3 different types of disaccharides. We have the maltose, which basically is glucose, because it turns into 2 molecules of glucose. But that happens when we eat like wheat, rice, and things like that. Those are glucose molecules. They're not sweet, but they're definitely sugar molecules. And then we have sucrose, which is another enzyme which is another disaccharide that the pancreatic enzymes have to break down. And those come from our fruits. They have fructose and glucose in it, and they take an enzyme called sucrase. So I'll just underline that we're talking about the sucrase right now. But these things have to split into different pathways. Now, one of them goes to the liver, and then one is quickly absorbed into our bloodstream, because glucose is that one that is quickly absorbed into our bloodstream. This is the reason why we would have a person with diabetes. Now, I'm going over a lot of different easy ways that a person can develop issues or conditions based on their mouth and what they put in their mouth. So the person that has a diabetic condition, the glucose molecules pretty much get into the bloodstream so fast, because they are the fastest absorption way for our energy, that the pancreatic juice cannot keep up with it. That's what's going on. So then we drink things like a milk or something that has also another sugar, which needs another enzyme called lactase. So we're dealing with lactose from sugar. A lot of black people are lactose intolerant, So they don't have the enzyme lactase, so shouldn't worry about drinking milk at all. But this is how ways that a person will get diabetes, for that matter. So I want to go over another type of condition, because people that have celiac disease or ulcerative colitis or just developing any type of stomach ulcers, they usually develop there in the duodenum, where they have a stomach or peptic ulcer, and that's mainly because they're not metabolizing certain things like bacteria grows. This is a parasitic condition. Most of these things are parasitic conditions or bacterial overgrowth. You ever heard of SIBO, which is a small intestine's bacterial overgrowth that gets here into the microvilli and sticks together. They stick together and they make a gap in between or cracks inside of your microvilli, and now you can't absorb any of your nutrients. This is called a leaky gut syndrome. Most people are going through that, and then it's a lot of different things, guys. So I hope you're coming to understand a little bit more, because I'm really about to dig deeper into learning about the fats and the proteins and things like that, how that is digestible. And we're still going to go over some more conditions of undigested material, people that have to need emulsification with the fats. Let's dig into it. Let me erase this board. And I think we covered a lot more than what was expected. So, okay, y'all people, I did say that I was going to really go deep into the sciences of our digestion. I kind of really been staying on the surface because, you know, it gets a little deep in certain areas. So let's see how far your mind can take you when I draw out this picture for our digestion. Now, right now we are talking about proteins. Proteins are, we can really exclude certain foods in order to get the maximum amount of our proteins. Now, we get a lot of proteins from our fruits and our vegetables because it is the amino acids that build up to the proteins. Now, I want to use an example out of a particular meat, because our culture in America pretty much is 70% of us are meat eaters. Now I'm going to use Philly cheesesteak for example. The steak, for example, is our protein, and unlike the carbohydrates, protein takes up a mechanical digestion. It is being masticated, that it means chewed in the mouth, and it doesn't start its chemical digestion until it reaches the stomach. But the job of the tongue is to make the food turn into a ball, and they call that a bolus. At the back of our throat, at the soft palate, it goes down our esophagus as a bolus until it reaches the sphincter. It starts to secrete something from our gastric glands. Now, every gland secretes a fluid, and it secretes about 3 different fluids in our gastric gland. That is, let's draw the gland for a second first. There's an area that protects our stomach, and it builds every 5 days. This gland is being renewed. So it is secreting 3 fluids, and that 3 fluid is mucus, because it's a membrane, and it also secretes hydrochloric acid, and the other one is pepsinogen. Now we need to know something about pepsinogen, because our children, as an infant or a baby, they do not produce pepsinogen. They actually go through a different pathway to break down proteins with a different enzyme called renin. And we're going to talk about renin a little bit later. Renin actually comes from our milk protein, so we know that the babies are on the milk. So this steak enters the hydrochloric acid, and the person didn't even chew all this food well. Now, how did they get down there? For one reason. How did the food get down there? Food got down there by the body's natural movement called peristalsis. That is the movement that goes down our alimentary canal until our rectum. And the hydrochloric acid is there to sterilize and to break it down. But this person did not chew all his food well, so he ends up having to sit for about 4 to 5 hours. That's how long proteins take to digest. Now I said in our carbohydrates that it takes about 2 to 3 hours, because why? Glucose is usually the main sugar that is being broken down in order to, it's our fastest pathway. So sugar is good for our energy, you know. So proteins take the longest. So when a person is eating this Philly cheesesteaks, the bread comes first, it's being digested first. Now take this for example. Most wheat bread is broken down into what they call glutamorphine. Glutamorphine. We know that glutamorphine can cause some inflammation. If we did not know, because gluto is from gluten, and it's going to stick to our small microvilli. So finally, this Philly cheesesteak digests the wheat first. So I blew up this session so that you can see that our microvilli inside of our small intestines, before it even gets there, it goes through this area first, guys. This is called our duodenum. And it has little ducts that are attached to it, and those ducts are our bile duct and our pancreatic duct that secretes this pancreatic fluid. Now, it goes down as a fluid. Glutamorphine has this way of, what is morphine first? Morphine is an opioid, and that is pretty much inside of all of the wheat products. Morphine can have you high, it can have you drunk at a point of time. I've read studies on how pizza can make a child at a lower state turn them into ADHD because of the hyperactivity that glutamorphine, the morphine, is doing to their brain. Now, I want to explain that a little bit further so that you can fully understand it. Now, gluto is the gluten. We know that gluten is being stuck all on our microvilli. It's sticking these microvilli together. Now, this little blue area that we see is our microbiome. Let's say microbiome. I'm gonna use that word because we need to know the correct name for our healthy bacteria and our bad bacteria. The microbiome is this layer that protects us, or protects our microvilli from too much absorption. Now, in order for you to understand how we get our nutrients, we have these things called enterocytes. That's what's being absorbed inside as the amino acids of the protein. So the enterocytes are sitting inside of the microvilli, going around, and they stop inside. This is how we get it. Almost like how our hair particles in our biochemistry lecture. But instead, we got this big vein or portal system. It's called the hepatic portal system. And it allows enterocytes to connect to it and pick up our nutrients. So they're waiting for all of this fluid to come down and to pick up our nutrients in the size of amino acids. So they're there and they're gluing because it has gluten. This is gluten. that's gluing some of those microvilli together. Now the problem with this is, guys, when certain things are glued, those enterocytes are not being able to absorb nutrients or absorb certain amino acids. So when this steak comes down, this big piece of steak that you wasn't chewing all the way, it's a heavy particle. The enterocytes and the microvilli are like, hey, we can't take big chunks of steak here. We can't take that. So it goes down this 120 feet tube. This is a 120 feet tube. It's longer than a football field, guys. So it's curved. So it has a lot of movement that has to happen. A lot of peristalsis has to happen in order to break this down. Now, 10% of large material particles like this steak particle, inside of the colon can get stuck into our sacculated huasca. That's what's inside of our colon. That's what the walls of our colon call the huasca. Now, this piece of steak goes down this tube and is causing damage, big damage. So every time it hits a corner of your small intestines, what's going to happen is it's going to pull one of these off. It's going to completely pull it off. So now your fluids and all of your nutrients that you get in your liquid form, because this is all liquid, is now going straight into the bloodstream. And now it's getting uploaded. This is our gut barrier. We have a gut barrier. Morphine is getting inside of your bloodstream. This explains how a person get autism or cannot get healed from autism. This leaky gut. This is called a leaky gut. And a lot of people are going through parasitic conditions where parasites can be uploaded into your bloodstream. Parasites are not just here, not just inside of the microbiome, the gut flora. In order to keep that healthy, you got to eat garlic. You got to eat fermented foods and things like that to keep that healthy. You got to feed those good guys, because the garlic actually selectively, I'm not going to talk about garlic, but garlic actually selectively picks out bad bacteria to export them out of the body. But when a person continues to eat this Philly cheesesteak, matter of fact, the cheese got casein and cheese got rennin. We're going to talk about that in a second. And it's actually keeping those villi glued together. So when it finds a weak spot, that steak come over there and pull it off. So these leaks cause major problem, guys. This is how lupus, this is how fibroids, because right up under our small intestines, for our women, your uterus is sitting right there. So the uterus actually encapsulates this fluid and turns it into a mass and keeps it away and keeps it out of the uterus. So it's sitting right there on top of it. So if you didn't understand how a lot of these things are happening, the gut barrier, we got a brain barrier. So once it hits the blood, it can hit the blood-brain barrier. Once it hits the blood, it can hit the skin barrier. Once it hits the blood again, it can hit the lung barrier. We've got 4 different barriers inside of our body. So this is how a lot of people get sick, because of certain things in gluten, the morphine that's inside of gluten. We also have casein that has morphine on top of it. So let's go ahead and explain a little bit of the milk proteins. Now, the milk protein, you would say, the milk proteins have a longer pathway. I don't know what that looks like. But in our babies, we give them soy milk, we give them rice milk, we give them cow milk, and it's too many different proteins. It's too large of a protein for our babies. Those cow milks are made for cows, you know. So you don't want to put that large molecule up under a microscope and see how big that is going through your bloodstream. And it's crazy. It's too big for the babies. It's too big for any of us. We shouldn't be having it. But it goes through the stomach. Goes through the stomach, and it goes through a pathway called renin. We just talked about it a little bit. But renin needs another enzyme. So just like we go through pepsin, it doesn't need another enzyme through the stomach, but it needs another enzyme for our children. So it makes it a little bit longer for our children. It needs prorenin as an enzyme to be activated by the hydrochloric acid that's there. So it's called prorenin. And that's also, it has another protein. Milk, these casein gluten, also casein morphine that's inside of those cow's milk. It needs paracasein as the enzyme to break that down. This paracasein has a longer pathway within our pancreatic enzymes also, and this is how it can damage the pancreas. And our children that grow up drinking milk from age 1 to 7, and then they end up with a failure in producing insulin inside of their pancreas. Now, all of this makes sense. I hope you understand it a lot more. I did want to say that depression is started this way, anxiety is started this way, because we are affecting our GABA neurotransmitters. Once this happens into our gut barrier, it's uploaded into our brain barrier. So we're affecting dopamine, we're affecting serotonin. It inhibits our way to calm down, so that's why we get anxiety. This is the way of our digestion, people. I do want to explain that it takes about 5 days for this healthy bacteria to start to regenerate. The microvilli starts to regenerate about 5 days. And as the babies actually grow up, they don't have renin anymore. We have pepsin, so it pretty much disappears. But if a baby is breastfed, the colostrum actually helps it out even more. You won't have this problem with the autism, the ADHD, and all those different things, because the baby can actually process the mother's microorganisms, and the mother's immune system helps build it a lot faster. So